3 years passed like a slow death. Earth continued to function. People went to work. Trains ran on schedule. The sun rose and set, but something fundamental had broken in humanity. Every parent wore the same expression now. Hollow eyes, tight smiles that never reached their faces. They moved through life like ghosts, waiting for something they could not name. Captain Hana Kim still commanded the defense flagship. The Valorans allowed Earth to keep a small military force, not enough to threaten anything, just enough to patrol their own space and feel like they had some dignity left. Hana went through the motions of her duties, but at night she reviewed schematics and tactical data that had nothing to do with her official assignments. Deep beneath a mountain in what used to be South Korea, General Taeyang Yoon oversaw a facility that did not officially exist. The entrance looked like an abandoned mining operation. Inside, 2,000 scientists and engineers worked around the clock. They were building weapons, not the kind that followed galactic conventions or treaties, the kind that made other species wake up screaming. Engineer Sora Bayek led the Quantum Weapons Division. She had not smiled in 3 years, not since they took her daughter Yoonji. Sora worked 18-hour days, sometimes more. She ate at her desk. She slept in the lab. When other engineers tried to talk to her about anything except work, she simply stared at them until they left. Her colleagues understood. Half of them were the same. The monthly messages from the children were carefully controlled. 30 seconds of video. The children sat in clean rooms wearing clean clothes. They said they were fine. They said they were learning interesting things. They said they missed home. Every message was exactly the same length. Every child used similar words. Parents watched these videos over and over, searching for hidden meanings, for signs of trouble. Most found nothing. Some saw everything. On the Valoran Education Facility Omega-7, 12-year-old Hyun Kang had become something the guards did not expect. A leader. The Valorans thought human children would be easy to manage. Separate them by age and language. Keep them busy with lessons. Feed them well. They would adapt and forget their parents. This was how it worked with every other species. But humans were different. Hyun had organized secret meetings among the children. They used maintenance tunnels and broken security cameras. They shared information. Some children had seen things, medical procedures that did not make sense. Other children who disappeared and never came back. Guards who talked when they thought no one was listening. Hyun was smart enough to understand they were not students. They were prisoners. The clean rooms and good food meant nothing. Something was wrong. He could feel it the way animals feel earthquakes before they happen. He started teaching the other children to pay attention, to remember everything, to prepare for something bad. Back on Earth, Ambassador Jiho Park noticed something strange in the Valoran administrative files. He still attended diplomatic meetings, still smiled and nodded and pretended Earth was adjusting well to imperial rule. But he had access to certain databases now, and buried in medical reports and facility manifests, he found patterns that made his blood freeze. Children were being transferred between facilities. Not for education, for something else. The medical terminology was dense and technical, but Jiho was not stupid. He knew what genetic sampling meant. He knew what neural mapping meant. He printed everything he found and took it to people he trusted. People who had the same look in their eyes that he saw in the mirror every morning. Dr. Mirai Cho reviewed the documents in her lab. She had spent 3 years studying Valoran biology and culture. She knew more about them than any human alive, and what she saw in those medical reports confirmed her worst fear. The Valorans were not just educating human children. They were studying them, experimenting on them, trying to understand what made humans different. The Valorans had conquered hundreds of species. Most adapted quickly. They accepted their place in the empire and moved on. But humans had something else. Something that made them dangerous. The Valorans wanted to know what it was, so they were taking human children apart to find out. The first death was reported as an accident. A child named Min had suffered a reaction to routine medical treatment. Very rare, very unfortunate. The body would be cremated according to imperial protocol. No, the parents could not see their child one last time. Regulations prohibited it. The ashes would be returned within 6 months. Min's parents lived in Tokyo. When they received the news, they did not cry. They did not scream. They simply stopped functioning. Neighbors found them 3 days later, still sitting in their living room staring at nothing. They had not eaten, had not slept, had not moved. Something inside them had broken completely. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. One death became 2, then 5, then 20. All accidents, all very unfortunate, all cremated before parents could see them. The Valoran authorities expressed their sincere regrets. They promised to review their medical procedures. They said every possible precaution would be taken. Captain Hana sat in her quarters and watched the news reports. Her hands were completely steady. Her face showed no expression. Inside, something was changing. She had been a soldier her whole life. She understood duty and sacrifice.
She had made peace with dying if necessary.
But this was different. This was not war. This was butchery. And they were butchering children. She sent an encrypted message to General Tai Yang. 3 words: accelerate the timeline. The general responded immediately. Already done. They had been working on the assumption they would have 5 years. Maybe 10. Now they had months. Maybe less. Every scientist and engineer in the hidden facility knew what was at stake. They stopped sleeping entirely. Engineer Sora completed the first prototype of something the galaxy had never seen. A weapon that could slip through Valoran shields like they did not exist. She called it the Ghost Protocol. She had built it thinking about her daughter. Every calculation, every test, every failure and success, all for Yunji, all to bring her home. Ambassador Jiho received a message through unofficial channels. It came from Hyun Kang on Facility Omega 7. The message was hidden in what looked like innocent homework, encrypted in a way only humans would recognize. The boy had smuggled out evidence. Photographs taken with improvised cameras, medical logs stolen from careless guards, names of children who had disappeared, locations of hidden labs. The evidence was undeniable. The Valerans were harvesting neural tissue. They were mapping human brain structures. They wanted to create hybrid soldiers with human aggression and Valoran technology. They thought they could control it. They were wrong about many things. But mostly they were wrong about what would happen when humanity found out. Jiho took the evidence to Earth's secret council. The room was full of generals, scientists, and politicians. All parents, all waiting for this moment. He showed them the photographs. Children strapped to tables. Medical instruments that had no innocent purpose. Lab notes describing procedures that had no names in any human language because they were too terrible to have names. The room was silent for exactly 30 seconds. Then General Taeyang stood up. He spoke quietly, but everyone heard him perfectly. The time for waiting was over. The time for pretending was done. Humanity had surrendered once. They had been civilized. They had followed the rules. And their children had paid the price. The council voted. It was unanimous. Operation Broken Chains would begin in 72 hours. Every human military unit would activate simultaneously. Every hidden weapon would be deployed. Every Valoran military installation in human space would be destroyed. This would not be a war of territory or politics. This would be a rescue mission. And anything that stood between humanity and their children would cease to exist. Captain Hana received her final orders. She stood on the bridge of her ship and looked at her crew. They knew what was coming. Most of them were parents too. She did not need to give them a speech about duty or honor. They knew why they were here. They knew what they were fighting for. The only question she asked was simple. Are you ready? Every person on that bridge answered the same way. Yes. On Facility Omega 7, Hyun gathered the children one last time. He told them something was about to happen. He did not know what, but they needed to be ready. When the doors opened, they needed to run. They needed to survive. Their parents were coming. He was sure of it. Human parents always came for their children. Always. The countdown began. 72 hours, 60 hours, 48 hours. Earth was silent. No broadcasts. No announcements. Just millions of parents preparing for the moment they had been waiting for. The moment when they stopped being victims and became something the galaxy had never seen before. 36 hours. 24 hours. 12 hours. The Valoran military noticed nothing unusual. Earth was quiet and compliant as always. They had no idea what was coming. They had taken human children and thought there would be no consequences. They had forgotten the oldest rule in nature. Never threaten a parent's child. Never back a mother into a corner. Never assume that mercy means weakness. 6 hours. 3 hours, 1 hour. Captain Hana sat in her command chair. Her hands rested lightly on the controls. Her eyes were clear and calm. She thought about her daughter's last message, the fear hidden behind the smile. The stars looked different now. Captain Hana Kim stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense flagship, staring at the massive alien vessels that filled her view screen. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Ships made of metal that seemed to flow like water, glowing with purple light that hurt to look at directly. Behind her, the crew worked in silence. Everyone knew what this meant. 3 months ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. They had built colonies on Mars and Europa. They had sent ships to nearby stars. They thought they were doing well. They were wrong. The universe was crowded and humanity was very, very late to the party. The first contact happened at Tau Ceti Colony. A mining station with 3,000 people disappeared from all communications. When Earth sent ships to investigate, they found the Valoran Imperium waiting. The aliens made their message clear through translated broadcasts. Submit or die. Those were the only choices. Now Ambassador Jiho Park sat across from the Valoran commander in a sterile meeting room aboard the alien flagship. The ambassador was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had 3 children back on Earth. He kept thinking about them as he listened to the translator device explain what the Valorans wanted. The Valoran Imperator was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil. When it spoke, the translator made its voice sound flat and emotionless. The message was simple. The Valoran Imperium had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They controlled 2,000 star systems. Humanity had exactly 1 week to surrender completely or face total destruction. Ambassador Jiho tried to negotiate. He offered trade agreements, technology sharing, and cultural exchange. The Imperator listened politely, then showed him what happened to species that refused. The view screen displayed a dead world. Oceans boiled away. Cities turned to glass. Nothing lived there anymore. That species had said no. Back on Earth, Dr. Mireille Cho studied everything they learned about the Valorans. She was humanity's best xenobiologist, and what she discovered made her stomach hurt. The Valorans did not have families. They grew their children in laboratories, mixing genetic material from multiple donors. They had no concept of parents, no understanding of the bond between mother and child, father and daughter. This difference would matter more than anyone realized. Captain Hana ran the numbers again and again. Earth had 47 warships. The Valorans had shown them footage of their fleets. Thousands of ships, weapons that could crack planets, technology that was millions of years more advanced. In a straight fight, humanity would lose in hours, maybe minutes. Her military training told her there was no path to victory. Her heart told her she could not surrender. But she had 2 children, a boy and a girl, ages 8 and 10. What mother would choose pride over their lives? The week passed like a nightmare. Earth's government met in constant emergency sessions. Some leaders wanted to fight. Better to die free than live as slaves. Others saw the math. Humanity would be extinct in days if they fought. At least surrender meant survival. The debates went on for hours, then days, while the Valoran fleet waited in orbit, silent and patient. On the 6th day, Ambassador Jiho managed to negotiate one small change. Instead of immediate total annexation, the Valorans agreed to a 5-year transition period. Humanity would have time to adjust, to learn Valoran culture, to integrate peacefully into their empire. It seemed like a victory. It was not. The Imperator presented the final term on the last day. For this transition to work peacefully, the Valorans needed insurance, something to guarantee humanity would not rebel during those 5 years. They wanted hostages, not adults, children. Every human child under the age of 15 would be relocated to Valoran education facilities. The translator explained it in simple terms. The children would receive superior education. They would learn Valoran language and culture. They would grow up as citizens of the Imperium, bridging the gap between 2 species. The facilities were comfortable and safe. Parents could send messages once per month. After 5 years, when humanity had proven itself peaceful, the children would return as adults, ready to lead their people into a new age. Ambassador Jiho felt his heart stop. He looked at the Imperator's face, searching for any sign of understanding. There was none. The alien truly believed this was reasonable. Dr. Mireille had been right. They did not understand what they were asking. They saw children as property, as tools for negotiation. They could not comprehend the scream building in every human parent's chest. The ambassador asked for time to discuss this with Earth's leaders. The Imperator gave him 1 hour. Jiho called home and explained the terms. The silence on the other end of the call lasted for 30 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Impossible. Unthinkable. They might as well ask for humanity's soul, but the Valoran fleet hung in orbit. Their weapons were charged and ready, and Earth had no defense that could stop them. The choice was simple and horrible. Give up the children for 5 years or watch them die along with everyone else in the next few hours. Captain Hana received the final orders from Earth Command. They were surrendering. All terms accepted. She had to go home and prepare her children for transport. Her hands shook as she read the message. This could not be happening, but it was. 3 days later, transfer day arrived. Hana stood in a crowd of millions at the Seoul Transport Center. Parents held their children tight, faces wet with tears they tried to hide. The children sensed something was wrong. The younger ones cried. The older ones stayed quiet, trying to be brave for their parents. Valoran transport ships descended from the sky like falling stars. They were beautiful and terrible. Hana knelt down and hugged her son and daughter one last time. She told them to be strong. She told them she loved them. She told them she would see them in 5 years. She did not tell them she was dying inside. Her daughter, the smart one who loved to read, whispered a question. "Why are you letting them take us?" Hana had no answer that made sense. She just held her tighter. The Valoran guards were efficient. They processed children in groups of 50, scanning their identification and loading them onto transports. They were not cruel. They simply saw this as a job. Move Group A to Location B. The fact that every child cried and every parent looked like they wanted to die meant nothing to them. Ambassador Jiho watched his own son walk up the transport ramp. The boy turned back once and waved. Jiho waved back, his face frozen in a smile that felt like it would crack his skull. When his son disappeared into the ship, Jiho fell to his knees. Around him, millions of parents did the same. The transports lifted off one by one. Within 6 hours, every human child was gone. Earth was silent. No celebrations. No traffic. Just millions of empty homes and parents sitting in empty rooms, staring at toys and clothes and photographs. That night, Captain Hana stood in her daughter's bedroom. The walls were covered with drawings. The bed was unmade, stuffed animals scattered across the blankets. She picked up a worn teddy bear that smelled like her daughter's shampoo. She held it and finally let herself cry. In government buildings across Earth, military leaders met in secret. General Taiyang Yun looked at the faces around the table. Every person there was a parent. Every person there had just given up their child. And every person there had the same look in their eyes, cold, patient, calculating. They had surrendered. But surrender and defeat were different things. The general spoke quietly. The Valorans had made a mistake. They thought they had won. They thought humanity would adapt and accept their place. They were wrong. The Valorans had taken something they could not understand, and humanity would teach them what that meant. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Very soon, the meeting ended. The leaders went home to empty houses, and Earth began to change. The Valorans saw a conquered species learning their place. They did not see the rage building like pressure in a sealed container. They did not understand that they had crossed a line that should never be crossed. They had taken humanity's children. And for that mistake, they would pay a price beyond imagination. The plea buried in innocent words. The first Valoran military station died without understanding what killed it. One moment it was monitoring human space, bored guards watching empty screens. The next moment it simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no warning. The quantum disruptor mines that engineer Sora had designed did not destroy matter. They removed it. Every atom in the station and the 3,000 Valorans inside just stopped being there. Across 50 systems, the same thing happened simultaneously. Valoran installations vanished. Defense platforms disappeared. Supply depots ceased to exist. In the first 60 seconds of Operation Broken Chains, humanity killed over 1 million Valorans. The war had begun and the enemy did not even know. They were fighting yet. Captain Hana's fleet emerged from quantum space directly above facility. Omega-7. The Valoran defense fleet was still powering up their weapons when human ships phased. Through their shields using Sora's ghost protocol, the Valoran admiral had exactly enough time to realize he was looking at technology that should not exist before a relativistic kill missile turned his flagship into expanding plasma. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 8 minutes. 12 Valoran warships against 20 human vessels. The humans fought like nothing the Valorans had ever seen. No formations, no tactics, just pure aggression. Human ships rammed enemy vessels at full speed, their crews choosing certain death to guarantee a kill. One human destroyer, engines failing, accelerated directly into a Valoran carrier and triggered its reactor. Both ships vanished in a blast that lit up the night sky of the planet below. Hana watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Her orders to the fleet had been simple. Every child comes home. Everything else is acceptable loss. Her officers understood. Most were parents. They knew what acceptable loss meant. It meant everything. Every ship. Every life. Every shred of humanity's future. All of it was worth less than a single child's safety. The assault teams hit the facility surface like a hammer. General Taeyang had trained them personally. They wore armor that made them look like machines. They carried weapons that violated every galactic convention on warfare. And they had one simple rule. Any Valoran between them and the children dies. No exceptions. No prisoners. No mercy. The Valoran guards had energy weapons and powered armor. They had defensive positions and numerical advantage. None of it mattered. The human soldiers moved through the facility like death itself. A guard raised his weapon. Before he could fire, a human soldier put 3 rounds through his helmet. Another guard tried to surrender. The soldier shot him anyway. These were not warriors fighting an honorable battle. These were parents coming for their children, and anything in their path was already dead. Hyun heard the explosions and knew it was time. He had prepared the children as best he could. When the doors to their section blew open and smoke filled the hallways, he started moving. The older children helped the younger ones. They stayed low and quiet just like Hyun had taught them. They could hear gunfire, screaming, the sounds of battle, but they kept moving toward the evacuation routes they had memorized. A Valoran guard stumbled around a corner, weapon raised. He saw the children and hesitated. That hesitation cost him his life. A human soldier appeared behind him and snapped his neck with mechanical efficiency. The soldier looked at the children. His face was covered by a helmet, but Hyun could see his eyes through the visor. They were not the eyes of a killer. They were the eyes of someone's father. The soldier knelt down and spoke in Korean. "I'm here to take you home." More soldiers appeared, forming a protective circle around the children. They moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, clearing rooms and checking corners. Any Valoran they saw died instantly. The soldiers showed no emotion, no rage, no hesitation, just cold mechanical violence. Captain Hana landed with the second wave. She moved through the facility searching for her children. Every room she passed was full of evidence. Medical equipment, lab notes, restraints built for small bodies. She forced herself to stay focused. Time for rage later? Right now, she had a job to do. She found them in a medical wing. Her son and daughter, alive and terrified, but alive. They were thin, too thin. Her daughter had a scar on her arm that had not been there before. Hana wanted to ask what they had done to her, what they had taken. But there was no time. She grabbed both children and ran for the evacuation point. Behind her, a Valoran scientist stepped into the hallway. He was not armed. He raised his hands in surrender. He tried to explain that he was just following orders, that he had tried to make the procedures as painless as possible. Hana turned and looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. Good. He should be afraid. She raised her weapon and shot him once in the head. Her children flinched at the sound. She did not. She had crossed a line somewhere in the last 3 years. Maybe when they took her children. Maybe when she saw the medical reports. Maybe just now, looking at that scientist's face and feeling nothing but cold satisfaction as he fell. She had ceased being civilized, and she felt no regret at all. The evacuation took 4 hours. Human ships ferried children off the facility in waves. Not all the children made it. Some had died before the rescue. Some died during the fighting. Hana walked through the makeshift morgue and looked at the small bodies covered in sheets. She counted 73. 73 children who would never go home. 73 families that would never be whole again. She gave the order personally. When the last child was clear, she activated the facility's reactor overload. The entire installation would be destroyed. Every lab, every piece of equipment, every record, and every Velaran still inside. Several hundred aliens would die in the explosion. Hana felt nothing. They had chosen their side when they hurt children. The facility disappeared in a flash of white light. From orbit, it looked like a small sun had been born and died in an instant. Hana watched it burn and felt something settle in her chest. This was just the beginning. One facility down, 37 to go. And after that, every Velaran world that had supported this atrocity. News of the attacks reached the Velaran Imperium within hours. The Imperator called an emergency session of his high command. They reviewed the reports in stunned silence. Humans had destroyed 40 military installations, killed over 2 million Velarans, rescued thousands of children, and done it all in less than a day. The Imperator had underestimated them. Badly. The Valoran military assured him this was just a desperate strike. Humanity had used all their hidden weapons. Now they would negotiate. They would realize they could not win a prolonged war. The Imperator authorized a diplomatic mission. They would offer to return the remaining children. They would withdraw from human space. Surely the humans would accept. They were civilized beings. They would see reason. Ambassador Jiho received the Valoran delegation on a neutral station. They arrived expecting negotiations. They found something else. Jiho sat across from the Valoran diplomats and listened to their offer. Return of all children, full withdrawal, financial compensation, a formal apology, everything humanity had asked for 3 years ago. Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up. He placed a data pad on the table. On it were images from the medical facilities. Children strapped to tables, lab equipment covered in blood, bodies in cold storage. He let the Velarans look at it. He watched their faces. Some looked away. Some tried to explain. None of them understood. Jiho spoke quietly. His voice was steady. You had your chance for peace. You chose to take our children. You chose to hurt them, to study them, to use them. You thought we would accept this. You thought we would adapt. You were wrong. We are not like other species. We do not forgive those who harm our young. We do not negotiate with them. We erase them. The Velaran ambassador tried to argue. This was just a misunderstanding. Cultural differences. Mistakes made in good faith. They could work this out like civilized beings. Jiho looked at him with empty eyes. We ceased being civilized the moment you took the first child. Now you will learn what humanity truly is. Not the species that builds cities and writes poetry. The species that survives. The species that protects its own at any cost. And the cost for you will be everything. The human delegation walked out. The Valoran ambassador sat in silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. They had not conquered a peaceful species. They had not taken hostages from a civilized culture. They had stolen children from predators, and now those predators were coming for blood. The Imperator received the report and finally felt fear. Real fear, not for himself, for his entire civilization. The humans were not fighting for territory, not for resources, not for power. They were fighting because their children had been hurt, and there was no negotiating with that, no reasoning with it. You could only survive it. If you were lucky, Captain Hana sat with her children in her quarters. They were safe now, fed and cleaned and warm, but something in them had changed. They had seen things children should never see. They had learned that the universe was not safe, that evil existed, that sometimes even parents could not protect them. Hana held them both and promised she would never let anyone hurt them again. It was a promise she intended to keep, no matter what it cost, no matter what she had to become. Across human space, similar scene. They had become something new, something that the Velaran Imperium was broken. Their territory had shrunk to 12 systems. Their military existed only in scattered pockets. Their government operated from hidden bunkers, moving every few days to avoid human hunter-killer teams. The war was over in every way that mattered. Humanity had won, but victory felt hollow. The children came home in waves. Transport ships arrived daily, carrying thousands of traumatized young people. They were different now, older, harder. Some had scars, Some had blank expressions. Some cried constantly. Others never cried at all. The children who had left Earth had been innocent. The ones who returned had seen too much. Hyun returned to Seoul and found his father waiting at the spaceport. Ambassador Jiho looked 10 years older than when Hyun had last seen him. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes. Hands that shook slightly. Hyun walked up to him and stopped 3 meters away. The distance between them felt like a canyon. Jiho tried to hug his son. Hyun stepped back. The words came out cold and precise. You gave us away. You sat in a room with them and signed papers that let them take us. You chose to let it happen. Jiho's face crumbled. He tried to explain. The weapons. The threat. The impossible choice. Hyun listened without expression. Then he walked away. Some distances could not be crossed. Some wounds did not heal. Engineer Sora found her daughter Yoonji among the recovered. She ran to her, crying her daughter's name. Yoonji looked at her blankly. No recognition, no emotion, just empty eyes staring at a stranger. The medical report explained it. Neural damage from the experiments. Memory suppression. Psychological trauma. Her daughter was alive, but the person she had been was gone. Sora held her daughter's hand and felt nothing in return. No squeeze, no warmth, just a small hand limp in hers. She had built weapons that killed millions. She had helped destroy an empire, and none of it had brought her daughter back. Victory was ashes in her mouth. General Taeyang called a meeting of the military command. The room was full of officers who had led humanity's war. They looked exhausted, victorious but hollow. The general stood and spoke plainly. The Valorans were defeated but not destroyed. They still controlled 12 systems. Millions of them still lived. He proposed complete eradication. No survivors, no mercy. Make certain they could never rise again. The room was silent. Some officers nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. One spoke up. A young commander who had lost her son in Facility Omega-7. She had killed more Valorans than anyone in the room. But she asked the question everyone was thinking. When do we stop? When does justice become genocide? When do we look in the mirror and see the monsters we fought against? Chancellor Nari faced growing opposition on Earth. Protests filled the streets. Not against the war, against what humanity had become during it. People held signs with images from Valoran worlds, cities destroyed, civilians dead, children orphaned. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity had become what they hated. They had hurt the innocent to punish the guilty. Nari watched the protest from her office. She understood their anger. She felt it herself sometimes in the quiet hours before dawn when she could not sleep. But she also remembered why they had done this. She pulled up the files on her computer. Medical photographs, lab notes, dead children. She looked at those images and felt her resolve harden. They had earned this rage. They had paid for it in blood. She would not apologize for protecting her species. Dr. Mireille published her research, 5 years of studying human psychology during wartime. Her conclusions were disturbing. The trauma had changed humanity at a genetic level. Stress hormones during the crisis had triggered epigenetic changes. Future generations would carry this in their DNA. An instinctive, overwhelming drive to protect children. An instant, violent response to any threat to the young. Humanity had evolved. They were not the same species anymore. The galaxy formed a coalition, not to help the Valorans, to contain humanity. 12 species signed a mutual defense pact. If humans attacked any of them, the others would respond. They were terrified. Earth had gone from an insignificant newcomer to the most feared military power in known space. And they had done it in less than 5 years. Commander Daehyun received intelligence that Imperator Vexus Theron was hiding in a remote system at the edge of former Valoran space. The old alien was alone except for a small security detail. Broken, defeated, irrelevant. Most humans wanted to leave him there to die slowly. Daehyun had a different idea. He asked Ambassador Jiho to deliver humanity's final judgment. Jiho was surprised. He had expected to retire in disgrace. His son would not speak to him. Half of Earth blamed him for the transfer, but Daehyun explained, "You negotiated the surrender. You should deliver the verdict. Show them what their choice cost. Show them why humanity will never forgive." Jiho traveled to the remote system alone. He found the Imperator in a crumbling building that had once been a military outpost. The alien was smaller than Jiho remembered, older, tired. His forearms hung limply. His shimmering skin had dulled. He looked like what he was, the last remnant of a broken empire. Vexatheron saw Jiho and knew why he had come. The Imperator tried to speak, tried to plead, tried to explain that he had not understood, that his species had no concept of parental bonds, that the experiments were meant to help integrate the species, that he had made a terrible mistake. Jiho listened in silence. When the Imperator finished, Jiho placed a data device on the table between them. He pressed play. The screen showed footage from the medical facilities, not the quick excerpts shown to diplomats, the full recordings, hours of them. Children screaming, children crying for their parents, children dying slowly while Velaran scientists took notes, all recorded, all documented, all carefully preserved. Jiho made the Imperator watch every second. When the alien tried to look away, Jiho grabbed his head and forced him to keep watching. "You wanted to study us," Jiho said quietly, "to understand human potential. Here is your final lesson. We are capable of infinite love. We create beauty. We build civilizations. We reach for the stars. But when you harm what we love, we become capable of infinite cruelty." The recording showed a specific child. A boy, Jiho's son. The footage showed every moment of his captivity. Every experiment. Every procedure. The final moments when the neural extraction went wrong. The screaming. The convulsions. The flatline. All of it recorded in clinical detail by scientists who saw him as a specimen, not a child. Jiho spoke without emotion. "My son died calling for me. He wanted his father. He did not understand why I was not there to save him. For 3 years I have lived with that. Every night I hear him calling. Every morning I wake up knowing I failed him. And I will carry that until I die." He pulled out a weapon. The Imperator closed his eyes, ready for death. But Jiho did not fire. Instead, he placed the weapon on the table and stepped back. "I am not here to kill you. Death would be mercy. You will live. You will watch your empire die, your species scatter, your legacy turn to dust. You will die alone, knowing that your people's extinction is your fault. That is humanity's judgment. Live with what you have done." Jiho left. Behind him, the Imperator sat in silence. The data device kept playing. Child after child, scream after scream, a catalog of his civilization's sins. He would watch it for days, for weeks, until the images burned into his brain, until he could see nothing else, until he finally understood what he had unleashed. Back on Earth, the debate continued. What should humanity do now? They had destroyed an empire, killed billions, changed the balance of galactic power, but the children were still broken. The families were still shattered. Victory had not healed anything. It had only created more scars. General Taiyang died 3 months later. Heart attack, stress, exhaustion. He had pushed himself beyond human limits to win the war. His last words, spoken to his aide, were simple. "I regret nothing. They hurt our babies." His funeral was attended by millions. Hero, monster, savior, butcher. He was all of these things. So was humanity now. Chancellor Nari stepped down. She could not continue. The weight of millions of deaths pressed on her shoulders. She had authorized every weapon, every atrocity, every choice that had seemed necessary in the moment but haunted her at night. Someone else would have to lead humanity forward, someone who had not crossed the lines she had crossed. The galaxy waited to see what humanity would become. Conquerors, peacekeepers, isolationists? No one knew. A new term emerged in galactic politics. The quiet line, an unspoken boundary. Do not threaten human children. Do not harm human families. Do not push them to the edge. Stay on your side of the line and humanity would trade, talk, and cooperate. Cross the line and face extinction. Engineer Sora continued her work. Every day she spent hours with Yunji, showing her photographs, telling stories, trying to rebuild the memories the Valorans had destroyed. Some days there was progress, a flicker of recognition, a small smile. Other days there was nothing. But Sora did not give up. She would never give up. That was what being human meant. Ambassador Jiho visited his son's memorial every week, a simple stone with a name and dates. Too few years. He would stand there in silence, sometimes for hours. One day he found Commander Daehyun there. The younger man was looking at another name, his daughter. They stood together without speaking. 2 fathers, 2 empty places in they. The war expanded like a cancer. Within 2 months, fighting had spread to 50 star systems. The Valoran military tried to contain it, but humanity fought with a ferocity that broke every assumption about civilized warfare. Human fleets did not retreat. Human soldiers did not surrender. Human commanders ordered attacks that guaranteed their own deaths if it meant taking Valoran lives with them. Supreme Chancellor Nari Song led Earth's war government from a bunker deep beneath what used to be Geneva. She was 60 years old, gray-haired and tired, but her eyes burned with cold fire. She had authorized every weapon, every tactic, every horror that humanity unleashed. When advisors questioned the brutality, she showed them one photograph: a child's body on a medical table. After that, no one questioned her again. Commander Dae-hyun Lee ran the Ghost Fleet, a group of ships that specialized in psychological warfare. They did not just fight, they terrorized. Dae-hyun had lost his wife in a Valoran orbital strike. His children had been among the dead at Facility Omega-7. He had nothing left but rage, and he channeled it into creating nightmares. The Ghost Fleet would arrive at Valoran colonies in the dead of night. They would broadcast messages on all frequencies. Names of children who had died. Images of what had been done to them. Then they would list the names of every Valoran on that colony and explain, in perfect detail, how they were going to die. The attacks always came exactly when promised. The Ghost Fleet kept every promise. Humanity deployed weapons that made other species watch in horror. Relativistic kill missiles traveled at 90% light speed. When they hit a planet, the kinetic energy was equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. There was no defense, no warning. Just a streak of light in the sky, and then everything within 500 kilometers ceased to exist. The Valoran homeworld's third moon died this way. 4 billion Valorans lived there. They saw the missile coming on their sensors with 30 seconds warning. Not enough time to evacuate, not enough time to pray. The moon cracked like an egg. Debris rained on the homeworld below for 3 days. The Imperator watched it happen and understood that humanity would kill everyone. Everyone. Dr. Mireille Cho completed her most terrible creation in a lab that smelled like desperation and hatred. She called it the empathy virus. It was a neural pathogen specifically designed for Valoran brain chemistry. Infected Valorans would begin to feel human emotions. Love, grief, the agony of loss. For a species that had never experienced these things, the virus was torture beyond imagination. Deployed on 3 Valoran worlds, the virus spread like wildfire. Within weeks, millions of Valorans were experiencing something their species had evolved to avoid. They felt phantom children in their arms. They woke screaming from nightmares about loss. They understood finally what humanity had felt, and it destroyed them. Suicide rates on infected worlds reached 90%. The galactic community sent envoys to Earth, begging for restraint. Representatives from 12 species arrived at the Sol system. They brought offers of mediation, military support against the Valorans, technology, resources, anything if humanity would just stop the weapons that violated every treaty, every law, every standard of civilized warfare. Chancellor Nari met them in a cold conference room. She listened to their pleas without expression. When they finished, she asked one question. "Where were you when they took our children?" The envoys had no answer. Nari continued. "You watched, you knew. You did nothing. Your silence makes you complicit. Your comfort came from our suffering. And now you want us to stop because our methods offend you?" She showed them footage from the medical facilities, not the edited versions, the raw recordings. Children screaming. Experiments that had no purpose except curiosity. Valoran scientists taking notes while small bodies convulsed. The galactic envoys watched in silence. Some vomited, some wept. When it ended, Nari spoke again. "This is what you ignored. This is what you let happen. And now you want to lecture us about appropriate force?" The envoys left. No species offered to help the Valorans after that. The word spread through the galaxy. Humanity was untouchable now. Not because they were strong, because they were terrifying. They had shown what happened when you pushed them too far. They became something worse than any alien monster. They became parents with nothing left to lose. Valoran fleet morale collapsed. Entire battle groups surrendered rather than face human forces. A Valoran admiral sent a message to Earth Command explaining why. His fleet had intercepted human communications. They were not military orders. They were parents talking to each other, sharing photographs of dead children. promising to make the enemy pay. The admiral said his crews heard those transmissions and lost all will to fight. How do you battle someone who views death as acceptable loss? Commander Dahyun broadcast executions. Captured Valoran soldiers were given a choice. Quick death or painful death? Most chose quick. Those who refused to choose got painful. The executions were live-streamed to every Valoran military channel. Dahyun wanted them to see, wanted them to know. This is what happens when you hurt children. This is what humans become. Captain Hana led the assault on Valoran Prime, the Empire's capital world. The planet had defenses that could stop any conventional attack. Orbital platforms with weapons that could vaporize fleets. Planetary shields that had never been breached. Ground forces numbering in the billions. It was impregnable. Hana did not care. She gave her crew 1 hour to evacuate to support ships. Most stayed. They understood what she planned to do. The flagship was the largest vessel in the human fleet. 20 kilometers of weapons and engines and armor. Hana pointed it at the planet and accelerated to 0.9 light speed. The Valoran defenders saw it coming. They fired everything they had, missiles, energy beams, kinetic weapons. The flagship's shields absorbed what they could. The armor took the rest. Hana sat in her command chair and watched the planet grow larger on her screen. She thought about her children, safe now, home on Earth. They would grow up in a universe that knew better than to threaten humans again. Her last transmission was 4 words, for every child. Then the flagship hit the orbital defense grid at relativistic speed. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a small star dying. The shields vaporized instantly. The platforms ceased to exist. The shockwave traveled down through the atmosphere and hit the capital city. The explosion could be seen from orbit. A flash of light brighter than the sun, followed by a mushroom cloud that rose into space. When it cleared, the capital was gone. 20 million Velerans dead, a crater 50 kilometers wide, the Imperator's palace, the military command center, the central government, all of it gone. Hana died instantly. She never felt pain, never had time for regret. She simply stopped existing, transformed into pure energy along with her ship and everyone on it. Earth mourned her as a hero. The Valorans remembered her as a demon. Both were right. The Valoran Imperium fractured after that. Regional governors declared independence. Colonies rebelled. The military split into factions. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted revenge. All of them were terrified. Humanity had shown them something they had never seen in 50,000 years of conquest. An enemy that could not be reasoned with. Could not be intimidated. Could not be stopped. Human forces pressed the advantage. They took system after system, not to hold them. Not to occupy them, to punish. Every world that had supported the child facilities was targeted. Every official who had signed off on the experiments was hunted down. Every scientist who had participated, every guard who had stood watch. Humanity kept lists, checked names, made sure no one escaped justice. Engineer Sora found the Valoran scientist who had experimented on her daughter. He was hiding on a remote colony, living under a false name. She traveled there personally. Walked into his home, showed him her face, showed him a picture of Yunji, explained in detail what his experiments had done to her daughter's mind. Then she shot him in both knees and left him to bleed out slowly. She felt nothing but satisfaction. The galaxy watched humanity's rampage with growing horror. This was not war. This was extermination. The Velerans had gone from ruling 2,000 systems to controlling less than 50. Their military was shattered. Their economy collapsed. Their population was dying from a dozen different weapons, each more horrific than the last, and humanity showed no signs of stopping. Chancellor Nari received daily reports of human victories. Each report included casualty numbers. Human losses were high. Entire fleets destroyed, worlds bombarded, millions of human soldiers dead. But the Valoran losses were higher. 10 to 1, 20 to 1. Humanity was winning through sheer ruthless determination. They accepted catastrophic losses because every loss bought vengeance. A Valoran commander sent one final message before his fleet was destroyed. He addressed it to all of humanity. We understand now. We took something we should not have touched. We crossed a line we did not know existed. You are not like other species. You love too deeply. You bond too strongly. We thought this made you weak. We were wrong. It makes you the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. We surrender. Please just stop. The message was broadcast across human space. Billions heard it. The response was silence. No one called for peace. No one argued for mercy. Humanity had been pushed beyond that.